Hi there, my name's Aaron Wilder, and I'm the curator of Amos Eno Gallery's online exhibition Unstable Language on artsy.net. And joining me is one of the amazing artists in the show, Kasia Ozga. And we're here to talk about your work. How you doing? Thanks for being
Hi,
here.
happy to join everybody. Hi.
And I just wanted to start by touching on a theme that is related to your exhibited works, and that is their relationship to protection. Can you elaborate a little bit on how protective structures or their absences inform the concept and material of your work?
Sure. I'm interested in productive structures as something that allows us to connect and communicate with other people. And so for me, protection is a means of providing safety in unstable times. I'm also interested in this idea of protection that comes and goes, that we build or use and then have access to or not. In this body of work, which I call flotation devices, I'm creating objects that we use to protect us in float in water, right, to help us stay afloat. And I'm building those out of macro images of human skin printed on vinyl. So this body of work was originally a different body of work. I made a series of large, kind of billboard-sized images of human eyes for a temporary public art commission a long time ago, about 10 years ago. And so those were up in a town in France for several months, one summer. And then they came down and I had them in my studio and I was kind of reflecting on what to do with them. And I became kind of more and more aware of issues involving immigration and migration. At the time, I was living in Europe and France, and I wanted to address them somehow in my work. And so the first piece that I made in this body of work was a big kind of zodiac raft. So, like, think a temporary raft that people, might use to cross into Europe through the Mediterranean. And by creating this piece out of human skin, I was really interested in something that created kind of a paradox. The object that we use that could potentially save people is like made of those people, and like, can it
Hmm.
really save them? And who is being saved? And who are we deciding to, let cross or not in the waters? And so I kind of, after that piece, I started making different explorations, iterations on this idea of flotation devices and skin, and kind of raising these questions of access, of the ways in which we allow goods to cross boundaries, but not people, and different questions relating to migration and immigration.
Yeah, and the work, a lot, all of your work takes on multiple lives, as you mentioned. You repurposed the surfaces of these life vests, and you also repurposed the ribbon, I think, right?
Yeah. Yes, I did. I had a studio made, an artist, Jean Goutel is a French artist who had a studio next to mine who is makes a lot of work at the intersection of art and design. And she works with repurposed ribbon almost exclusively in her work and had a lot of connections to local industry. At the time, had a studio in Saint-Étienne in France, which is a town that was famous for its ribbon industry.
Mm.
So like real close ties to the industrial history of that place. And so she was working with this leftover ribbon. She had leftovers from her practice that I was incorporating into mine. And I also had a kind of this overarching zero waste studio practice at the time where I was really trying to have each new piece driven by the leftovers from the previous body of work and then, you know, getting more material to kind of complement that and having that evolve over time. So.
And then another piece of yours that's in the show looks at protection from perhaps maybe a little bit more structural or a literal perspective.
Yeah, so this piece is a house, so actually clear like protection from the elements. Uh, at the same time, it's kind of ambiguous. It's inspired partially by Robert Venturi's Ghost House, which is a monument to Benjamin Franklin's home and printing press in Philadelphia, in which he uses kind of these structures to signify the space where a building used to stand that no longer stands. And so this kind of like memory and representation of absence in a way. So all of the text in this piece, which is different on the two sides of the roof, involves recreating labor slogans and documentation of labor protests, and signs relating to workers' rights, um, in that were kind of rewritten based on various historical documents and archival documents. So I took and created kind of various layers of these of the source material that I juxtaposed by kind of carving it into resin bonded sand and then pouring iron onto those surfaces. And at first I was just kind of showing them as these kind of flat surfaces. And they just really I was kind of looking at them thinking, it needs something more, it needs something more. And then one day it kind of came to me when I was thinking about that other monument that it would be kind of powerful to think about, what is a home for labor and also evoking kind of domestic labor, industrial labor, the relationships between the two in the piece.
Yeah, and the work, like the ribbons and the material from the previous one, has a had another life. So it started out as these individual panels, and then
Yeah.
they now exist in a different form.
Sure. And then the imagery from the piece also obviously had a different life because these are literally from photographs of signs people were carrying in like picket lines or from,
Yeah.
signs on some kind of information of like what specific procedures workers in various situations should do or legal kind of documentation about various affairs. Mhm.
And the other piece you have in the show, nothing here, nothing to see here, kind of has to do with a lack of an absence of protection in a
Mhm.
way.
Yeah, so this is from a body of work, and they're pretty small. They're fairly intimate, about 15 by 20 centimeters. So, maybe 8 by 13 or so, 12 inches. Um, and they are, again, this body of work is made from the remnants of a previous body of work. So I sewed these large tent-like structures out of blackout fabric. So this is what we put in curtains so the light doesn't come through them at night. So it's that kind of textile. And I embroidered it with a black thread. So in the previous body of work, I created these big tents out of this material, basically, that were kind of anti-sculptures. You would go in them and then they would block your vision and you couldn't see anything. So it's kind of sensory
Hmm.
deprivation situation. So I had those. And then I had all these scraps from that body of work and I wanted to use them for something. And it was during the last Trump administration. And at the time, I was a recent mother for the first time, and I heard about the family separation policies that he was enacting towards various immigrants born in the US. At the time, I was living abroad, but I was really emotionally affected by that
Hmm.
situation and kind of empathizing with the situation of people caught up in that. And so I started looking for AP press photos of these places in which people were being housed
These
and
cages, basically,
early,
yeah.
yeah, and separated from their children, and re-embroidering those images onto the black fabric. So it's a series of about 20 images, again, really intimate scale, so that when they're hung, I usually try to have a light source coming from the side in on a side of the wall, so that depending on where you're standing, you can either see the embroidery or it's kind of really hard to see. So it's like
Yeah.
it appears at a certain moment. And then the title, Nothing to See Here, kind of evokes, what do we care to see or not in relation to how we treat those amongst us.
Um, so I'm wondering if you can tell me a little bit about what you're working on now and maybe what is next that's coming up for you.
Sure. So I'm working on various pieces in wood and cast aluminum right now. And I'm very excited because I will be in a show on November 20th at Carter Burton Gallery in New York City. And I would love to see everybody there.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Kasia, for taking the time to talk with me about your work. And I want to let everyone know that Unstable Language will be on artsy.net through December 1st.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.